All right, college game breakers. We are back. Episode 40. You just saw us probably about 30 minutes ago. We wanted to go live a little bit sooner, but we had the Memphis Houston finished and we had the Iowa Wisconsin one. So we had to grind these out because the start of the games are coming up. But another conference preview, this time Big East. And that's all we will be talking about. We just covered the Mountain West. This is the 7th conference preview that College Game Breakers is banging out. Steven's here once again. He gets a nice little break after this because I've tapped him 3 times. But, with this one, me and him have the fan bias on Boise State. So if you hear any UConn talk from Steven, I wouldn't say take it with a grain of salt, but I know the homer will definitely come out. You'll be strategic in other teams, probably except for Creighton. So that's just where take those with a grain of salt, but always need to get the big fan in here with the Huskies. What's up? Big East time. How pumped are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for this. I was a little bit down, like towards the end of the book night injury. Like the first couple of games he came back, it was a little bit iffy, but he's looked like somebody who could have been player of the year if he played every game this year. Like he just has that type of skill set in and out. So I'm super excited for the tournament this week.
Yeah, and back at MSG, limited number of fans. So maybe, Steven, I know you've been grinding at work. Maybe you saved up some shekels to get yourself there, but we shall see if you get yourself there. I've been thinking about going, but it is going to be during the workday, so we got to figure that out. But regular season winner, Villanova, and I think this is going to be the theme throughout the conference preview here. Sorry if I repeat myself, but this is wide fucking open. Even though Nova did take home the regular season crown, I don't think that means much, especially given their state of the squad. We'll get into that later. This is the big question. How many bids? And we talked about the Mountain West, where it's strange. The Big East looking like they could have the same exact amount or even less than the Mountain West does get in. But I think 3 teams are completely locked in, no questions asked. I think there's a max of 4, just given where one of the first round matchups lays, where 6 is out of the possibility. 5 would be the best case scenario, but I just don't think there's a possibility where we see 5 teams get in. So I think 3 minimum. We'll definitely probably get a 4th, but I think that's its max. What are you thinking for the bids? You can give out the team names because I alluded to a few, but I'll rattle them out once you get done.
Yeah, so I mean, you can definitely guarantee 3, like you said. Like Villanova, Creighton, and UConn are going to be in, and then it should probably be 4, and I think that 4th should be St. John's. I mean, Xavier had a real good case till they faded down the stretch, and then same thing with Seton Hall. Seton Hall was sitting there as like the 3 seed in the conference. You thought they might have been all right, and they had such a bad finish to the year. I think their chances are probably gone unless they run the table, which I don't think they're going to do.
Yep, I agree with your 3 locks there. The Seton Hall St. John's first round matchup just had it last, so we get a nice little back-to-back here. I think that determines the 4th, and if Xavier goes on a run and upsets Creighton and then could potentially upset UConn, I think they need to win both of those to feel confidently in to make it to the finals. No, I don't think Xavier's going to do that, but that would be the best case scenario of where they possibly get 5 is if you kind of get a Seton Hall or St. John's final against Xavier. I think that's their only scenario where they potentially get 5 squads in it.
Yeah.
All right, conference overall. Steven, UConn comes back into the Big East, finishes 3rd. You always alluded to it and all the things that we've ever done together that it was not going to take them a step. You thought they were going to win it outright. They competed. COVID pauses has affected each team individually and differently. So that's where the Big East was one team that when you're going into the conference standings, each of them had a different pause. Each reacted differently to it. And there's no really overarching themes other than 4 teams play with a solid tempo, and that's the Johnnies, DePaul, Georgetown, and Creighton, and that's in the scale of who plays the fastest, the slowest. And then you have Xavier, who kind of sits smack dab in the middle. The rest play slower tempo, and then other than that, I didn't see anything noteworthy or standing out where I think you have a bunch of the teams that play exactly the same. And then you have St. John's and Villanova who kind of stick out as the oddballs in the conference with their styles.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I know I don't think that at least UConn style of tempo is how they want to play normally. I think they were forced to play a slower tempo because of injuries. So I think when you see them in both tournaments, you're going to see a faster tempo, which for people that didn't watch every game like I did, you're going to be a little bit confused by it because you're going to expect lower scores, and they might be a good team to bet some overs on because now that we have our full team and we can play faster and deeper, it's going to be one where overs are going to be pretty easy to – I think overs should be pretty easy to hit, and they do have the best defense in the league, which I like. And then there's just a lot of teams that – like Villanova is not the same. St. John's is probably the biggest surprise. Creighton is – well, you know what Creighton is. If they don't if they don't shoot over 40% from three, they lose, and they lose to bad teams. And you can just look back at the schedule and see the teams they lost to in the Big East, and they were not good teams.
Man, it's wide open. That's just the easiest way to put it. You can make an argument for almost every single, or not for every single team, for majority of the squads in here. So it's a good way to get it right into our outright odds. You have Creighton sitting as the favorite at plus 200. These are all via Bet Rivers. Not a lot of books have them out, so take these with a little bit of a grain of salt. But we do have one that's published. You can bet them. Bet Rivers. Creighton plus 200. UConn plus 235. Nova and the injuries plus 400, because this is one where you have a lot of different injuries and different things to take into effect rather than most other conferences. Maybe it's because one of the ones that me and you are way more dialed into just because it's regionally the biggest one by us. But I just think there's a lot of current circumstances you have to take into account. You got Xavier at plus 500, which, man, that just seems ratty as hell. Seton Hall at plus 775. And then the Johnnies is kind of where you break it over the plus 1,000 route. Johnnies, you can get them above plus 1,000. Depending if Posh is back is going to determine a lot about that number. But that kind of hits it off. You can make a good case for a bunch of long shots here. But who are you instantly crossing off in this one, Steven?
I'm instantly crossing off DePaul.
Shocker.
DePaul just they just don't have
the worst team in the conference. You're writing off. Them
and Butler without Aaron Thompson, they're done. I mean, I'd feel more confident about Georgetown than a lot of the other teams in the first round, just because outside of their 2 losses to UConn, Georgetown had been playing really well. I'm pretty sure they won 4 out of their last 6. And I know they had some good wins in there. Who they beat? I want to say they beat Creighton in that stretch.
Who, G-Town?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a bunch of good wins. We'll break down these teams a little bit more because we're talking about who we're going to instantly cross off. So I like when I've streamed with you and Goose on these two because you're giving me the sole fan perspective and the gut test. When I've done it with Jordan or JD, they've looked always more at the numbers. And that's kind of where I love getting these 2 different types of perspectives of when you're looking at the games, because you can't really say one's right, because the teams I'm crossing off are going to be Creighton, Nova, and Xavier. I don't like backing a team to win a conference championship. That's one of the top dogs in there when you're getting a plus 500 price with Creighton. Who knows what's going on with that situation? We're not going to touch on it too much, but McDermott, I think he's serving his suspension. We hit on it yesterday, so if you want to hear our thoughts on what we think of that situation, that was in yesterday's stream. But you can't get me to put money behind Creighton plus 200 when you have to go through X and most likely UConn. If you think about hardest path, you can just money line parlay that, and you'll probably get close to plus 200 price. Nova at plus 400, the status of Moore, that's going to determine it huge because Gillespie's gone, and that guard depth is non-existent. If they're going to put in Little Arch in that, they're just going to get, I'm going to take whoever it is, and it might be, I don't want to joke and say it's a 401k bet, but if Moore and they're going to start Little Arch at point guard, I might just throw house money on fading Nova for whoever they play that one. So those are the two teams I'm instantly crossing off. X would be next because you could just take a money line against Creighton to get a good price.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is this sounds a lot like what I said in the preseason preview. I said Villanova has way too many small forward, power forward guys and not enough guards. They lose one of them and it feels like they're dead. I know it's their senior, the guy that's been there forever, that they trust the most. But still, if you recruited any like pretty good guards to play behind them to give you depth, you would be in a much better spot right now than where they're at.
Well, think of the Nova teams that won the championships. They took the 2-year gap in between each one. So maybe they were a year off, but this seemed like the rendition of you had Big Arch in the first one. Then you had Brunson in the second run. And then you had Gillespie. Jay Wright just works, matures, develops these point guards to run his system. And this is the first time that one has had a serious injury. Prayers for Gillespie. Hope he gets well and recovers nice because he's a good player. Great out there for that Villanova offense. But when you see his go-to ball handling guard that he plays 32 minutes a game, 35 minutes a game, when that's gone and you're only giving me plus 400, sure, the top of the bracket's a little bit nicer, but you hit it. They usually, I don't know who the next guy in line is at Nova. If anyone in the comments can tell us who's next in line, because Moore isn't a true point guard, but you could still see that first game against it was Providence, where yesterday they just did not look strong. Obviously, they lost outright, but that's just where they're trying to figure out the new groove. Took another big hit there, so that's kind of where with Nova, even though you get the plus 400, the 1 seed, I'm just not that confident that Jay can pull this one out. It's a shame, but this was a team that had Final Four aspirations, and when fully healthy, I think they definitely could. Right now, they seem like they're primed for an early upset in March because they'll still make the tourney.
Yeah. If I had to put an estimate on who I think should be the point guard, it would probably be that guy Brian Antoine if he could ever stay healthy for a full season. Because he's probably the highest rated guard they have in their backcourt. I'm assuming he's the most talented. He's just had big injuries every year that have killed his potential growth. But he's the guy that I think could be a point guard. And then, let me see. That's the wrong one. You just want to go into who we think we can win it?
Yeah, I was about to say, let's get your homer out a little bit because hopefully that'll keep you a little bit less bias for the rest of it. So let's talk UConn, because if there is a team that I'm looking at that has less than 1,000 odds, UConn is the first team that pops out because I love the path that they have to get there. So at plus 235, I think it's justified. I'm not going to be putting any money behind it, but gotta let you kick it off. Why does UConn run the table here?
UConn runs the table here because they have the best player in the conference. Pretty clearly. I mean, we saw it when everybody said Zagorowski was the best player in the conference, and then the one time him and Bouknight played head-to-head, Zagorowski got locked down by R.J. Cole, who's always been known more of as just a scorer. Mm-hmm. So when you're getting locked down by him and then Bouknight's putting up 40 against your team, you're clearly not the best player in the conference. So we have the best player in the conference. The shooting is coming along now that we have everybody back. Polly's been a good three-point shooter. Cole's a good three-point shooter. Bouknight, a good three-point shooter. The X factor that I think will determine if we can win the Big East tournament or not is Jalen Gaffney needs to play with confidence like he did against Georgetown yesterday. Like if you saw his highlights from yesterday, he started out 2 of 2 from 3. He had the big dunk on the fast break. And when he's playing with confidence, using him as a double-digit scorer off the bench makes us just so much more deadly than everybody else. When you can play a Cook very sparingly, but when he does, he's an energy guy. Carlton, Whaley, and Sonogo in the front court with those other guys I just mentioned. That's the deepest team. I just want them to play a stretch where they just run everybody out of the gym because they have the depth and the talent to do it. It feels like they just choose not to. So if they play like that, I don't know who has the talent to beat them.
So they're definitely a team that was affected hard by the pauses because it seemed like every time they found the groove, they ended up on the wrong side of being on a pause. Because I believe they had 3 throughout the season. You guys are definitely coming in hot. I've won 4 in a row. I've won 6 of the past 7. But Steven, I have a lot of notes here because I knew this was going to be the team we were going to talk the most about. What's UConn's best win of the season?
USC.
And that matured very well. Other than USC, what was their best conference win, I guess you could say?
I mean, I don't know. I'd probably have to say Xavier.
And that's exactly what I'm getting to is all of their conference wins have came against teams that are playing in the first round against Seton Hall. They lost to each of the top 6 once, so they didn't get any season sweeps of it. They're swept by Creighton, and yes, that's at a different program or organization right now, but that's just the concerning part that's keeping me off the plus 235 and keeping me off of just UConn being a lock to run it here is like we said, we just need to see them to run the table once. Everything is setting up for this to be the prime time because the only loss in the past 6 of the 7 was against Nova. I'm sure if they caught Creighton as of recent, once they got in this good rhythm, that they could easily take them out because they basically almost did the first time in overtime. Well, so that's just where the one true good win other than UFC is the hardest part that's convinced me because the eye test of recent, I'm sold. When you can spank Seton Hall and Georgetown in those last 2 games like you did, that's where they are truly the hottest team and the one coming in with the most momentum into this tourney, which you want.
Yeah, like I guess the only thing I would say to like spell like the things of like we haven't beaten any of the good teams is when we lost to Creighton, that was the one game Tyler Polley didn't play in, and that was coming off a 17-day pause, and we still should have beat them in regulation if we hit a free throw. So, I mean, they're coming in like they were coming into that game playing all their games as scheduled. They were in a groove already. We were coming off 2.5 weeks with no game and still almost beat them. Mm-hmm. And then I think the only concerning game was really the St. John's game.
Not like Providence?
Not really Providence
because I know you weren't at full health, but that one's still a little bit concerning because they're the team you're most likely going to draw. And sure, you do have Book and you have the full health now, but still the 11-point win. That one's just. I mean,
I'm fine with playing Providence because when we played them the second time at full health and just absolutely killed their program because I saw the message boards after that game and they were all like, yo, fire Ed Cooley. This team isn't going to get the players you need to get to compete.
Yep.
We're not on the same level. I was like, yo, we killed their program. But when St. John's was just able to press us to death and just come back in that game, that was the most concerning one. But pretty much everything in January, I'm not completely sold on it because that was when we were missing both Andre Jackson because of his wrist injury and James Bouknight. And those are the 2 wing defenders that can guard a lot of these other good players. So I'm just thinking, I know we didn't play necessarily the top teams at the end of the year. Like we killed Georgetown yesterday. We beat Seton Hall pretty convincingly, which I like. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the Marquette game, we killed them too. And they had been playing not great, but at least better. Like their freshmen were starting to show up a little bit more.
Yep.
And we beat Georgetown again. And that Villanova game was tough just because I felt like we were playing 8-on-5 the whole time. Like I just watched that game and every time like our guys, like they'd be straight up, just like moving backwards, trying to move away from the contact. And they're like, no, that's a foul. I was like, how is that a foul?
So that's where in that game, because I listened to the first half on the radio and I caught the second half live because I was driving and Book started off on fire and his legs are finally under him where you saw him in the first half putting up 20 against Providence and Nova. And then in the second half, he's only putting up 4 and 6 because he's getting back from that injury. And yes, he's probably the most explosive, the best true scorer in the conference. And even without him, conference only stats, they are first in defensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage on defense, not allowing 2-point percentages. They have the best 2-point field goal percentage and block percentage. So all of those are great recipes where you're getting yourself on the right foot to roll in with it. What's concerning is they foul a shit ton, worse at the rate on defense. We've seen them clean that up as of recent, but still, Book has been drawing some early fouls in games. Teams are targeting that. It's a great strategy to go after. And then they do allow boards, which is the weirdest thing I saw, is they're first in getting offensive boards in the conference, but they're eighth. So only 3 teams were ranked worse than them and allowing boards. So they're hitting the offensive ones hard. They cleaned the defensive ones and put up all those stats and clean up the fouls a little bit. I think they're they're almost the odds-on favorite to be cutting it down in MSG.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like they have to be, because we were going through all our problems early in the year, and now it seems like other teams are starting to catch their problems late in the year. And you just know UConn in March and April is a different team than UConn in December and January pretty much every year. And it's just that age-old saying, like, defense wins championships. And we do, even though I remember in the preseason part of the Big East show, you said UConn's offense was going to be great. The defense was going to be the part that was suspect. I feel like I've known it the whole time, but Dan Hurley makes sure you have a good defense. I don't think he even really cares as much about fouls. He wants you to be physical and get into guys and make them uncomfortable, which I like to see. And it's led to us having probably the best defense in the conference this year.
Yep, and that's definitely where I've said that they're the favorites, because in the preview stream I said they're probably third, and now come the full circle after the body of work and where the programs are, I think they are the favorites. But the only other team that I think you can make a confident, not even confident argument, but an argument for would be Creighton, because it seems like the team that comes out of the bottom half of the bracket is going to be cutting down the nets. And this is where you just have to hope that the seniority, the leadership, the experience of Zagorowski, Jefferson, Ballack, Bishop, and Mahoney, they're the ones that just pull it out. Sure, whatever's happening with the coaching is happening right now, but you got 5 guys on the court where they've played together so much. They're very familiar with each other. They can almost coach themselves at this point. They could just have this mantra of they want to win it for themselves. They don't care who's coaching. So that's where, plus given all the stats, yes, I know you don't like Zagorowski, but some games he does show like he deserves to be on the top team in the conference. Other ones, it looks like he doesn't deserve to be consideration for even the third team. So this is where if they get their backs against the wall, they're still a top 15 offensive team. Their defense is suspect here, but this is where they can go on the run. And as long as they get past UConn, I think they've got it, because that's their only tough game in the conference, is that UConn Creighton game, I think, might determine the conference.
Yeah. I mean, I know I don't like them, but I think they should honestly want to rather lose in the Big East tournament, because the way they play, they need to shoot the ball well from 3. You're not going to shoot the ball from 3 well 9 games in a row. I would almost, if I was one of their fans, you're making the tournament regardless. Get your bad shooting game out of the way now in the conference tournament and hope you have a better chance in the NCAA tournament. But when their defense doesn't play well enough, if they have one game where their guys just aren't hitting the open shots that they usually hit, they can get upset by almost any team in this conference. I won't say any team, because, like I said earlier, DePaul and Butler just stink right now.
Butler has Aaron Thompson. They're a must-bet on team. When he's not playing, they're a fade-on team. Found that out the hard way yesterday. First game that I bet on Butler this season. And, yeah, Aaron Thompson completely determines that team. So let's get into our long shots that we like. So this is one where we're going to talk about almost every game in here. We're already at 24, 25 minutes. So I like where we're at, because we're getting into the good stuff. We're getting into matchups, break down who we think can go well against each other. So, Steven, if you had to put long shots on the odds or just long shot due to seeding, who do you think is a good team to back that isn't the top teams that we've talked about?
I like St. John's as long as they have Posh Alexander back. I know I keep going back to what we said early in the year, but I was saying it early in the year. Those 2 guys from Our Savior Lutheran, I think it was Wusu, but I know Posh Alexander, and then they had their other freshman, the those guys, neither of them were ranked that high. They were both like lower 3-star guys. But I just knew from watching them, they fit St. John's system perfectly. And that's exactly what they did. And they brought St. John's up from being, I think, like 9th or something in the preseason rankings to having the 4 seed coming into the conference tournament. I think when they're playing well and they're putting their press basketball the way that they like to do it, they can find a way to beat anybody because they're going to force turnovers. They might not be like, once they get into a half-court set, they might not be great on defense. But if they essentially kind of play like VCU's Havoc-type defense, they can catch almost anybody in this conference.
They have a great coach. Second year under Anderson. I mean, he's taken them quicker than I thought, because I always say the third year of the coach when he enters the school is his prove-it year, and he's proving it in the toughest season. I think one of the biggest reasons is you touched on Posh and you touched on other guys is Champagny. He's up there for first-team all-conference hands down because he's been electric this season. And when they play one of the different styles in the SoCon conference, I don't know, ETSU's playing today, but I like them because they play the one contrary style in the entire conference, which definitely helps because it's hard to do the one-game prep. Sure, Johnny's probably played most teams already, but when you get that press after playing against the different styles, it's just different. And that's where I agree that Johnny's or Seton Hall is the team that holds the most value or your best long shot to pull it out. You can make a case for Xavier, but once they had plus 500 odds, better than Johnny's and Seton Hall, that's where I went directly there, because the upset that I'm watching for is going to be coming in that side of the bracket, because I think Georgetown takes down Nova, and that just sets up for whoever wins that 4-5 game to make it to the finals, because I think they'll take care. Whoever advances Seton Hall versus St. John's will take out Georgetown. And it's great because we just got that game where Seton Hall started on the 18-0 run and then ended up losing, where St. John's went on a 16-2 run in the second half. So they kind of matched each other, and St. John's just got hot late without Posh, which was huge, because the minute I saw Posh was ruled out and Seton Hall went on that 18-0 run, I was like, oh man, are the Johnnies really going to be dead? Because they're a team that's trying to get it dancing in March. But my upset to watch is going to be Georgetown over Nova. And that's just because Georgetown, they played them tough the 2 games, and without any true guard there, I'm relying on the highest variability team, where them getting past Marquette isn't a cakewalk either. But I think Nova does go down in that quarterfinals game, just because I'm not confident in what they do. In Georgetown, they just rely on the threes and the free throws. So, Nova's not going to foul. But if Georgetown just gets one of those games where it gets hot from 3, it's going to be good. They just have to defend the inside well. They don't do that. But I just think as long as Nova doesn't make 10-plus threes, Georgetown is a nice little underdog there, the eye up.
Yeah, and I know we're only talking about for this tournament, but all I'm saying is if you're looking for a team that's going to make the jump into being consistently good in the Big East, it probably is the team we just talked about in St. John's, because they only have one guy leaving after this year. As long as they don't have transfers, pretty much everybody comes back, and pretty much their whole starting 5. So they're going to be good. And then for my upset to watch for, I think Xavier should be able to beat Creighton again. But we talked a lot about it, and this is contrary to what I said in like the Mountain West, where it's tough to beat teams 3 times in a row. But it just seems like no matter what Xavier puts out on the court, they just seem to have Creighton's number. They've already beaten them twice in the regular season, and something about it just feels like a bad matchup, where I think Xavier could catch them a third time.
With Xavier, that January COVID break they had really killed the squad, because they were 10-2 overall, 4-2 in conference, and then they ended up the season 13-7, 6-7 in conference. So they had a pretty bad end to the run. So that's where they're probably one of the colder teams in there, but the way that they play, where they take care of the ball, rely on the inside game, and then don't rely on the 3 because they're the last in 3-point shooting percentage. But when you've gotten Creighton both times, and especially we're not knowing who's going to coach, because it kind of seems like they should just let the assistant roll, even though it was against Butler. Just keep the mojo good. Don't mess up a good thing going on right now. I doubt that happens, and McDermott's back there. So Xavier, there's no way I'm laying the points with Creighton in that game. That's 100% sure. So do I think they can win that one outright? Yes, but I'm definitely going to be taking the points there.
Yeah, and I mean, even though Xavier was playing bad after their COVID break, one of their last 3 wins was one of their games over Creighton where they beat them by 8. Granted, it was at home, but still, playing in MSG is much closer of a home game for Xavier than it is for Creighton. So,
all right. No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So for the first round games, you and we both have Xavier getting past Butler. I think that one's pretty simple. We don't have to dive deep into that one. Do we both have Providence getting past DePaul, or do you think DePaul can make some noise there?
Yeah, after the way Providence played against Villanova, granted it was a shorthanded Villanova team, but that Villanova team would still crush DePaul. So Providence looks like they're playing better. I have to say they're going to win that game just because Nate Watson is better than any inside pieces DePaul has. David Duke, even though I don't like him, is still probably the best guard on that floor for either team. And when you got the best guard and the best forward, that's enough to win the first round.
And then probably I wouldn't call it a toss-up game, but it's going to be lined at a pick-em. It's going to be Marquette and Georgetown. And I think that's the game that's worth spending a little bit time on because we really haven't talked about Marquette in depth where we talked about Georgetown a little bit so far because Patrick Ewing, he's turning it around. He did not have an easy year this year with how many people have left the program and the fact that they still have the 8 seed and that I have confidence that they could take out Nova where they've hung with some teams, have gotten some nice wins, very high variability. But I think that is good when you go up against Marquette. They are first in free throw rate and third in 2-point percentage, which doesn't match up that great with Georgetown, where Georgetown isn't that foul prone, but they've came into games where their starting 5 have all gotten into foul trouble at the same time. And Marquette lives at the line. And if they spot them any points there, that's where Marquette, I think, could get them. But other than that, it usually rains against Marquette from 3 on deep. They cannot guard the 3-point line at all, and they're very foul prone. So I think Georgetown, they do play with a slower or with the faster tempo than Marquette likes to do. So that's just where I think Georgetown hits some threes. We're going to ride the high variability team, and I think Georgetown gets out. What do you think about Marquette? You did it.
This is a different one just because I almost have to I kind of like Georgetown here just because they have the seniors that have been playing well. Like Marquette also has a few seniors, but those aren't the guys they really rely on anymore. They try to rely more on like DJ Carton and Dawson Garcia. Like Garcia's a freshman, Carton's a sophomore. And like you thought you could have relied a lot more on Theo John, but even in his 4th year, he can't stay out of foul trouble. And if you don't have him, Garcia is a big enough body to play down low, but he doesn't like playing down low. Like that's one of those times where I think Wahab can dominate inside with his size. I know he's not the most finesse guy, but he doesn't need to be at 6'11", 240. And then when Georgetown gets hot, like I saw them do to start the second half against UConn, they started off the second half at least 6 of 6 from the 3-point line. So when they're doing things like that against a good defense, I can't imagine what they would do against a poor Marquette defense. So I do think I think it should be Georgetown to come out.
And this is a great way to get into our semifinals here because I think all the quarterfinals games are – we're going to just give quick hits. We're going to say who we think advance because we both have our first rounds coming out the same. So, Steven, I already alluded to it. I have Georgetown beating Nova on my top part. Who do you have coming out of that game?
I still think Jay Wright's proven himself to be a good enough coach. I think he finds some way to scratch out a win there, but that's probably it for him.
And then in the next one, in the rematch, I'm taking my Seton Hall. I'm backing the Pirates here. I think they right the wrong here. I think Johnny's Not that they got the win too early, but with Willard, I think he'll adjust here. Yes, it's way more of a home court advantage for Johnny's than it is Seton Hall, but it's right next to each of them. So that's why I'm going to back the Pirates here. I think they make a nice little run. So I got Georgetown versus Seton Hall in my top semifinal matchup. Who do you got for that one?
I still got St. John's here. I know that they're younger, and I think it doesn't matter how many times you play them. I don't think you can prepare 100% for that defense. I think at some point, every game they're going to hit their run where they start playing fast, getting layups and steals. That it's just Seton Hall is not going to be able to control the tempo in that game. I don't really care, because as long as you got Posh Alexander and those guys there, even if they're getting fouls, they're going to also get steals and speed the game up. So if Seton Hall can't play their game, St. John's is going to win. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, at least one of us will be right with that one there in the top half. Creighton versus X. I'm just taking Creighton here. I think the seniority, and regardless who the coach is, I think it does grind them out the win against Xavier, even though they've gone 0-2 against them so far this year.
Yeah, no, let me get Xavier to beat him a third time. I just think Xavier has their number. I don't care about any of like the stats numbers. Sometimes when you just show up on a court, you just have that feeling of like, oh, we own this team. I think that's what Xavier has against Creighton right now.
And we've differed on the first three, but I know 100% we both have UConn coming through this one, because I know there's no way you're going against them to drop it against Providence.
No, I don't like picking Providence in general against anybody, so there's no way I'm picking them against my team.
All right, so you got Nova versus the Johnnies in the top half for the semifinals. Who do you think's representing the top half in the bracket in the finals?
Well, like I said, I think Nova is scratching out a win over Georgetown's as far as they go, so I got to take St. John's. I think I'd like St. John's more against Villanova than I do against Seton Hall. His same thing with it, like they're running their press, but they're running their press now against an inexperienced backcourt. That's going to lead to a lot of problems really fast.
And then in my matchup, I got Georgetown versus Seton Hall, and I think the Pirates make it out. Even if Nova does make it, the one team that Nova hates seeing at Madison Square Garden is Seton Hall, because it seems like regardless of who they've had on the roster, if they've always caught them in the semifinals or the quarterfinals. So I'm going with the Pirates to be in the finals. In the bottom half, you have X versus UConn, and I think I know where this one's going, but I just need to hear you say it.
Yeah, same thing except other way around. I know UConn has that confidence over Xavier, the same way Xavier has that confidence over Creighton. So I like having a good old original Big East championship.
All right, so you got UConn. No, I got UConn as well here, because I just think, I mean, even though with all the wins and everything against it that I alluded to, the defense, having the number one defense in the conference, that'll get them past the Creighton team, where I don't think they're in a good spot. But in the finals, I do think UConn does go down to Seton Hall. I got the Pirates, who are on the bubble hard, probably on the wrong side of the bubble. They punched their ticket by running it here. No one's expecting them to do it. No one's picking them to win it. I love that they lost to St. John's, because I hope I can get a better number. I probably will be putting a little run on them, because yes, they're turnover prone. Yes, they can't hit threes, but Roden, if he can find a way to put 3 consistent games together, that's all I need to see from him, because they're 10-5 when he gets 10 plus. When he doesn't get it, they're way under 500. I love Mamu. I think he's definitely in consideration for something we're going to talk about later. So that's just where I'm just going to ride the Pirates, where this team is built to make a long run. If they don't do it with Mamu this year, I don't think I could ever jump on ship again with the Pirates. So let's see if they can prove me right, because I'm probably taking the team with the worst momentum going into it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. They're 0-4 in their last 4, with losses to Georgetown, Butler, UConn, and St. John's.
They're about to.
How you want to walk into a tournament.
Nope, and I'm just going completely contrarian, whatever you want to say against it. Let's ride the Pirates because that's the only way they're punching a ticket to March, and they know it. So they're about to put on a good stretch. We'll lose first round after they make it, but that's where I think they do pull out the way here.
And, I mean, if UConn plays St. John's, I expect that to be a really good game. I think St. John's will still keep it close the same way they did against everybody else. But as long as UConn doesn't suffer an injury in the tournament to any of their key players, I think the guards that they have now compared to the guards that they had when they played them the first time are much more prepared to handle the press. And once they break the press, those athletes are going to put down some highlight plays in transition. And that's going to be those plays and the open threes that they'll get from breaking the press will be enough to win.
Yeah, and that's where if Johnny's does come out, that's where I think the 4 or the 5 wins this tourney. That's where I think whoever comes out of that game gets it, because if it does end up being St. John's versus UConn, I'm just going to back the underdog there and just think that Havoc messes it up and just hope Seton Hall completely buy low spot. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if UConn does run the table here, it looks eerily similar to, I forgot if it was 2011 or 2014, but whichever tournament where we were kind of on the bubble, then won the tournament and ended up coming in as like either like a 6 or a 7 seed or whatever it was. The year we beat you guys when you guys had your good point forward and were in the table. I expect it to be like that because I know last week we were projected as like an 11 or 12 seed. Now we're up to a 9. We win the Big East tournament. We're at like a 6. And then you come in as a 6 and you don't have to play a 1 until the Elite 8 probably. Or maybe the Final 4. No, I think it would be the Elite 8. If we don't have to see a 1 until then, it should be a deep tournament run and we might have another one of those seasons. I'm not going to expect it because you can never expect it, but a nice double national championship season again with the men and the women, we'd love to see it.
And that's where, who do you have as players your conference?
Oh, James Bouknight, obviously. When he plays at full strength, we don't lose. And when you get a guy that is that type of player for a team, he's the best player in the league.
Yeah, this is both of these, player and coach of the conference, is tough for me because you can definitely make the case for Book, but did he play enough games for it? You can make a case for James Robinson Earl, but I think he probably is going to be the hands-on favorite for it. But that's where I hope Champagny gets it for St. John's because, yes, Posh is also there. But Champagny, I mean, they've seen even with when Posh has missed a game, he's still holding down the fort. They've had the biggest over-exceeding year this season, and it's solely from Champagny. So I hope Champagny gets it.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost think Book missing games makes it that much more obvious that he should be player of the year because you can see the difference of when he's there and at full strength and then when he's not there. And the teams are just like different. When we're at full strength with him, we win games by double digits. When he's not there, they're either barely wins or we're losing to teams we shouldn't lose to. And to me, at least, that's the definition of somebody who is player of the year because it's almost like an MVP type thing. Like he's the most valuable person to a team reaching their full potential.
It's just hard with 20 games. He's only played 12 of them to give it to him. That's the only issue I have is where he played. I mean, I know your point. It proves it true because the 8 games that he missed, it definitely was their weaker 8. But I just think, yeah, give it to Champagny who did it for the whole year.
Yeah.
All right, coach of the year. Who do you got?
To me, it's Mike Anderson for the same reason you like Champagny as player of the year. Like nobody believed in St. John's at the beginning of the year. Even that first game where they played some really small school and barely got the win, you really thought this is going to be another down year for St. John's. Maybe they get to 10 wins. Instead, they're 16-10 and the 4 seed with a first round bye now. To me, that's the person I think deserves to be coach of the year the most.
And if they take the conference tournament into consideration, I think it might be Hurley if they do end up cutting down the nets. I think it's Anderson if they don't, just because he over exceeded expectations the most, even though UConn, I wouldn't say they had the most ideal year the first year back in the Big East, but you're not upset with it, especially where you're positioned to be. And I just think Jay Wright is the only other person you can make a consideration for. And maybe he gets it just because based off the season, but I don't know. It can't be McDermott. I think he's the obvious choice that it can't be. Cooley under exceeded expectations by the most, and then Steele was second. So once you knock out Providence and Xavier and Creighton, it comes down to Anderson, Wright, and that's where I just think I hope Anderson gets it because Hurley's definitely in consideration as well, but I think it comes down to Anderson or Wright.
Yeah, I think. I don't think it's Hurley this year. I think he just had too many problems to overcome, and then if they had a better run without Jackson or Bouknight, I think it should have been Hurley, but they didn't. So I think he'll win one soon. I think either the next year or two he'll get one, but I think Mike Anderson, even though I'm not a St. John's fan at all, he's the most deserving, so I'm going to put aside my bias and give him that one.
And that's the Big East tourney. I got Seton Hall winning it. You have UConn. Steven, I thank you for joining me on the past three. I'll be live one more time, late time tonight, because the late Maryland game determines the seeding for the Big Ten. So I'll be live later tonight, probably around 8:30 or 9 o'clock with Goose. But hitting the big fans this weekend. Can't love it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I'm back in time, I should be there to watch you guys. That should be fun.
Oh, perfect. Goose hating on the pick because he nailed him yesterday on the SoCon, but hating my Seton Hall love here. I mean, naturally as Rutgers, he can't show the Pirates any love.
Goose, I agree. Seton Hall stinks. They're going to be out in the first round. 100%.
And then till later tonight, thank you, Steven. I'll see you guys later.
Yep. See you later.